Hello and welcome to a Monster Hunter World video. So, first off, if you haven't beaten the main story of Monster Hunter World, please do not watch this because it will basically spoil the final battle. So, click off and defeat the game, come back, and I don't know if you feel like it. But in this video, I'm just going to be sharing my personal opinion and what I consider my personal review on the game. And yeah, I just want to share my thoughts and, well, what I feel about the game as a whole. So the first time I got my hands on Monster Hunter World, I literally played it for like a week straight. It was such an amazing experience. I literally was hooked up by the game. I literally played it over and over and absolutely loved it. Just taking my time, farming each monster, farming all of their armor sets before moving on to the next quest to farm the next monster and whatever it had to offer. And it was a very addictive chemical because now Monster Hunter World is a grindy game. It's all about grinding the same monster to acquire good gear, basically, and well, acquiring better gear in order to have a higher chance of essentially fighting the next monster. You kind of climb the food chain. You're basically on a food chain ladder. You essentially climb a ladder, trying while defeating monsters to get stronger, to basically climb further on the ladder of the food chain. And with every monster that you basically kill and make an armor, you have a higher chance of withstanding the attacks of the previous monster, and also dealing damage and defeating it, which is a decent. It is a decent, balanced progression system, which allows you to feel some kind of rewards. Every time you defeat a monster, you would essentially acquire better gear, you would acquire better loot, you move on to the next monster in the food chain, and after you've beaten every monster, you just move on to the next area. And it seemed that with every monster you fought, there were more that were essentially just hidden as you progressed, and more environments, more monsters. Most of the worlds are essentially separated into, well, what is there's basically a couple of monsters, like 2 to 3 monsters, I would say, maybe 2. There's like 2 monsters that are like, 2 to 3 monsters that are like the, I don't know, the denizens of the environment, and then there is the one which is the apex. And of course, killing the apex is, the hardest of all of them, and that requires some preparation, which was a nice little formula that allowed you to like get a sense of progression among the game, and I really liked that about the game. However, there are a few things that I have to take notice that I didn't really like about, well, all of that. And the first one was when I was in an expedition, I was given the impression before I got the game that I would have unlimited time to hunt the monsters, farm resources, and essentially no penalty. But then again, I guess that would be too, I don't know, too much for the player, because that you would be able to essentially grind every single monster without having that much difficulty, because you could just keep on going. You could just farm its parts over and over. And I guess that did seem in my head a little too good to be true. The reality is, in the expedition modes, while you have no time limit, being there, and you can die as many times or faint as many times as you want. The problem is the monsters do have a timer. A monster will only stay there for a specific time before leaving the area. So if you're hunting a specific monster, you are pressed for time, and yeah, that can be a bit of an annoyance. It kind of destroys the whole point of going into expedition to have to grind at your leisure, and that can be, it kind of dulls things, because you're hunting a monster, and eventually it just decides to leave. And honestly, they actually leave rather quickly. They actually have it takes more time for monsters to like. It takes more time for you to fail hunting a monster when it comes to time, when you're doing quests, than it takes when you're actually in the expedition. In expedition, I don't really know how long it takes for monsters to leave, but it definitely didn't feel like it was very long, and I ended up losing some monsters when I was so close in defeating them, and that was definitely frustrating. And I questioned myself, how is this the expedition? How is this the timeless mode that I was promised? I guess it would be too good to be true if, you know, we could literally farm the creatures with infinite time and infinite feints. It would be, I guess, too good. So yeah, that was my main problem. I didn't know that the creatures would actually have a timer on their own while in expedition, because I thought I was promised that expedition means I could hunt that monster for as long as I could. I could literally fight a monster, make it go to sleep because it wants to recover its strength, and really go back to my camp and, I don't know, start maybe get some fish, maybe get some maybe make some barbecue while I, you know, replenish my strength and stamina while I wait for the rematch, where it's going to be like the defining moment of whether the creature and I survive, or, you know, who survives basically. But that wasn't the case. I always, even in expedition mode, I always felt a press for time, and this unfortunately remained. Unless you're farming for resources, just regular resources from the environment, in expedition modes, then yeah, the expedition modes are not really good for farming monsters, unless you have the proper gear and you're already adapted at actually, you know, defeating the monsters themselves. So, as I stated earlier, the whole objective is to go into a mission, find a monster, find its tracks, discover more about it, and then locate it, defeat it, and essentially carve it so you can acquire its materials, so you can forge better gear. And while at first this was actually very, very interesting, and up until right now, where I fought the last boss, it is a system that I found to be really, really fun and entertaining, and I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all. But like I said, after defeating the main boss, the game becomes, unfortunately, more of the same. And this can be really, really, it can have different types of opinions, because after you defeat after at some point you defeat a big baddie called the Elder Dragon, the very first Elder Dragon you defeat, which actually I guess you would consider it to be Zora Magdaros. Kirin doesn't count. You defeat him, and it's suddenly, oh, is this the end of the game? And suddenly it tells you, oh, it's not the end of the game. There's still more to be done, and you feel a sense of happiness. Oh, are there going to be new monsters? Are there going to be new creatures to farm and hunt? This is awesome. And unfortunately, while that is somewhat the same, there are some creatures that are new and unique, while others are pretty much the same. It's basically the same thing. Essentially, what's it called? The hard mode. You kind of enter what is known as the hard mode of the game, where creatures are essentially the same, but they have a higher health pool and deal more damage, basically. So it's pretty much every creature you've already fought. They're just tougher and harder to beat. And yeah, all the armor you've been focused in farming, all the armor you took time to complete a full set, is no longer even good unless you've like maxed out armor spheres, and that of course max out its defense using armor spheres, and of course that means doing investigations over and over again. It's basically a grind over a grind that just never feels satisfying enough. And I mean, the whole point the whole point of the game is to basically hunt the monster down and essentially defeat it. And the problem with this game is that as the game becomes stronger and tougher, and enemies have a higher health pool and have a higher damage output, everything that you have done to acquire what you have done is essentially, it no longer matters. And the biggest issue that I have with the game is, so I remember the first time I defeated Aerathalos. It was a satisfying moment. After countless, well, I kind of defeated it in like the second try or something. Or is it the first try? I don't remember. But after defeating it, the battle was tough. He was tough. And after defeating him, I was like, oh, I defeated him. How about now? I get my rewards now. Only to realize, oh, its armor set is only going to... It's actually, I can only complete his armor set if I beat him another 5 times. So you literally spend the time to basically defeat a monster only to realize you have to do this over and over again until you've completed the full set. And interesting fact is that the full set of armor of that monster doesn't really make you stronger against any other creatures. It just makes you better at hunting that specific target. Sure, there are a few exceptions with getting like better defense and everything, but like your elemental stats, some creatures can completely overwrite that. And I have found that even when you have an apex predators, an apex monsters full set of armor, that doesn't necessarily make you in like the strongest. There literally is a normal creature that who has an advantage on that armor set and will essentially defeat you even if you have that armor set, which is supposed to be powerful. So the armor sets that you collect are essentially just to make you better at hunting that specific creature. Every monster that you fight has its own armor set. And the game kind of encourages you to farm each of that armor sets in order to stand a better chance fighting that specific creature. So defeating the creature is never rewarding at the first time because you have to defeat it another 5 to 6 times. And once you get down the rhythm of defeating that creature that many times, its armor set just feels it doesn't feel as good as a reward as it normally would have if you got it the first time. And well, the first few times at least, like the first 1 or 2 times, and now you can farm for the weapons and everything with knowing that you have a better set for it. And like I said, every creature has its own set of armor, which gives bonuses against fighting that specific creature. So when you have fought a creature and spent so much time trying to kill it, only to realize that the best way to kill another creature is another creature's armor set, then it's basically you start all over. So the fights never feel like they're completely rewarding. After going to the high-ranking monster hunting, and even past that, after defeating the final boss and going against like all the other creatures, it doesn't feel rewarding enough. Every time, all the struggle that I go through to defeating each creature, mind you, I'm playing solo because I can't play multiplayer. The game does not take into account that you might be in solo play. It really doesn't reward you for being a solo player as much. So after I defeat a creature, I felt like I didn't do anything because after defeating them, I had to do it all over again. And that basically kind of took most of the fun out of it. The reward for defeating the monster was no longer there. It was just I had to do this over and over to at least make my game time worth it. And that felt kind of unrewarding in my eyes. This is my opinion. I don't know about you, but this is how I felt. It felt that I wasn't rewarded for the creatures that I defeat and for how tougher they are. At least not with the first hunt, which was I guess it kind of fits in with the the grindy part of the game, which the game is it's all about the grind, and I don't mind that technically, but I do like a game when it makes the grind satisfying. And in this game, the grind is not satisfying. So the best way to describe the game's gameplay is essentially I guess the closest thing to describe it is a Dark Souls game. Literally, it's like you're fighting a Dark Souls boss over and over again. It's like take away all the enemies. I guess the little creatures that you find in the environment could be considered the little creatures, but they're not really that much. They're not that big of a deal. But literally, every time you fought a monster, it's essentially like you're fighting a boss in Dark Souls, and that can be good in one way. The problem is that I don't feel like you're rewarded enough for that kind of battle. And I guess it does make sense. I get the point. I'm fighting a giant monster that is like, bizarrely more bigger than I am and a lot more powerful. But I would like it if my character wasn't such a weenie, if he wasn't such a pushover, literally. He gets swiped by the tail and twiddles down the ground completely helplessly, unable to recover because he's just stuck there looking like all pretty, like, oh, it's the end of the world on the ground. And I found that very frustrating. Why can I not, at least if I have the stamina, consume some of that stamina to essentially get myself up before going to the ground? That way I recover myself. That way I can keep on the fight and don't just twiddle on the ground like I mean nothing, like I'm a puppet, like I'm a rag doll. Like, if you're looking for ragdoll physics, look no further than being hit by a monster and look no further than the main protagonist being hit by a monster. Literally, every hit, it's like it's like a child basically pushing a toy aside because it doesn't want it. That's basically how I felt. I felt like I was a toy that wasn't wanted by its child. Literally, that's what I felt like. And I couldn't do anything about it, literally. In some cases, like for example, when you're fighting a certain creature that can blind you, and for some reason, I'm not looking at that blinding, I'm looking behind me, and it still hits me. Like, you would think by logic, if I don't look at the light, I don't get blinded by it. But no, for some reason, it'll blind me even if I am looking, even with my back ahead of it. Somehow it's so bright, it just, swoops in front of my eyes. Like it's like somebody got crawling behind you and just grabbing you from behind with their hands. Like, peekaboo, guess who? And yeah, you just get, there is no, like, sometimes it just defies logic. But then again, you should never really put logic in a game. It kind of, it doesn't fit. But it would be nice to have be able to avoid some attacks by, using something that would be logical. And I get the idea of fighting a creature that is severely higher than me, severely bigger than me, severely stronger than me. But I would like the ability. I mean, the stamina system is there. I hate it. I absolutely hate it because I feel like I never have enough stamina. Even though I eat my things, I use my energy drinks and everything to build it up, there is never enough stamina for me to go around. I get it. It's to balance the game, but the thing is, you're fighting against a creature that's always attacking you and you have to dodge, and then you have to attack. In which case, it comes to a point where I never have enough stamina to attack it. I guess if I had someone, like a friend, for example, tanking the creature, not like something like that exists, or distracting it, I could recover my stamina and then go for the attack. But then again, like I said, I mean, what if I choose to play solo? What if I want to play by myself, me and the game? Good old-fashioned solo campaign. Like, then what? Am I just completely pucked because, the game does not recognize that I'm just one player? I don't know. Although that just might be me. I don't know if it's just me. So yeah, the creature is bigger than you. I get it. It's stronger. But you're supposed to be a professional, like, badass hunter. Or at least I thought you were. I didn't know. I didn't realize up until defeating the final boss that you're seeing right now. I did not know that your player is actually not a badass hunter, but a pushover. Literally, he's just a human being, frail and weak, who gets hit by a creature and then just rolls on the ground completely like he's nothing. Well, I would have liked the feature where I would have liked the incorporation of, like, the ability to use your stamina to at least dodge, to at least pick yourself back together or consume stamina in order to wake up faster, to get unstunned faster, to, like, get off the ground faster. You have the stamina. That way the game will allow you to, like, balance. Oh, I need to save up that stamina for in case I get hit, So that way I'm always, like, that way I have a way to counter every, like, attack. And even if you're choosing to guard, like, some creatures are so powerful, like, they can easily break your guard, and it kind of is pointless because that also consumes stamina. I can get it. And unfortunately, guarding doesn't really, I haven't noticed guard actually being able to, like, interrupt you when you're attacking. So you're literally still, even if you're blocking, you're still just as helpless as you were if you were dodging and you get hit, or essentially you get hit. So that is something that I really found somewhat frustrating. And obviously it forces the player to not want to get hit. If you don't want to roll over to the floor laughing or crying, you don't get hit. Just don't get hit. But sometimes the creatures, you have to take risks, otherwise you won't be able to deal damage. And this is where the timer is a pain, You can't dodge forever. You can dodge to wear the monster down, but then you have to deal some kind of damage. Otherwise, you're wasting time. You're wasting precious time, in which case the battle could be over before it even begun, and you don't want that. You're always pressed for time, and you feel that pressed for time. That is the thing that I hate mostly about this game, is that pressure for time. I don't care that I am a ragdoll by a giant monster, okay? I can bear with that. But I always feel, the reason why I always feel like that is punishing is because of that pressure for time. And uh, honestly, 50 minutes is not really enough for some creatures. Honestly, some creatures require a lot more than that if you're going to be cautious and careful and strategic and skilled. They require a lot of time. And compared to what you gain after that, all the materials that you acquire, it's not as rewarding. Like I said, it lacks that. That's where the lack of reward comes. You spend an enormous amount of time trying to take down a great beast, only to realize that you have to do that over and over again. Otherwise, it's pointless. One defeat is not enough to get you at least one set of weapon or one set of armor. Like, you have to do it over and over again, and that kind of breaks the reward. Like, oh great, I defeated this monster. Like I'm like swiping my brow of all my sweat. I'm like drying myself from all the heat that I've built up. I'm trying to just take a deep breath, let go of all the anger, all the hate that I had after being kicked, after getting my ass kicked by this creature over and over again. And I feel like, oh, okay, I finally defeated it. It's a reward. Only to realize, oh, do I want its weapon sets? Do I want its weapons? Do I want to make a full set of armor? Oh, I gotta fight this creature like 6 to 7 times, and that's not an exaggeration. That it's usually that month, depending on how much luck you have, because of the things that you have to farm afterwards. The first time you farm the creatures, the first time, like the low-ranking creatures, it's a piece of cake. Like every fight feels rewarding, but after at higher rankings, you get all these special gems that have a 1/10 or a 1% chance of being dropped by the creature, and you feel like, oh, you have to fight this creature. I don't know if there's a person who has acquired that in his first try. If you did, good luck. I envy you. But if you haven't, and you're one of those people who has like spent 20 investigations just trying to farm that one resource, then first off, I feel for you, and second, it just proves my point. There's too much luck in the game, Now, if they were to like some systems such as cutting the creature's tail off to get the tail, breaking a part of the body to get this part of body, I like that. But sometimes you don't get the things that you want from when you break them. Like, I literally remember cutting off the tail of Nergigante, one of the creatures that you fight, and harvesting the tail for the last part that I need to complete his armor set, only to get something else out of it. And I'm like, wait a minute, how did I get something else out of it? This is the tail. How can I farm another resource from the tail when I literally have the tail? I cut off the tail for that, and I don't get it, And it would be nice that when you break a part, you get that part, because otherwise it's just, what's the point in breaking the parts, It just adds to the pile that I have to do more just for a chance to be rewarded with, what, less? or just a chance to be rewarded with something good. And that kind of spoils the game in the long run. It kind of, like I said, the statement is the quote of the game, of the base game is, it's basically, it's more of the same. It gives you more content, but it's just the same, just with bigger numbers, with more things that you have to do. It never feels that it's rewarding you for the progress that you're doing. And I guess, I don't know if that was just me, but I did defeat the main story, and that's pretty much like what? After that, I get that up until the story is where, like, oh yeah, this is where it all comes down to it, This is where it all boils into the very end. And after that, I guess, after you beat the main story, oh, okay, now it's time to, move on, After you beat the game, you move on. But the game kind of forces some more content in order to keep you to keep you hold into the game. And this ends up being a little bit short-minded, because like I said, it just gives you more of the same. It's like the same creatures, just with more health and more damage numbers, and it gets boring. And the grind is fighting the creatures the first time is awesome, and the first time you beat them is the truest reward that you'll ever get. Farming for their armor is a pain in the ass, and that for some people that can be, for some people who like the grind, this can be okay, but for others it's very time consuming, and you literally have to, a single fight can take like, I don't know, 30 minutes, give or take, depending on how tough the fight is. And this can be time consuming. Literally, if you were to grind every investigation, every creature, farm everything, then I have to admit, you have no life. And I myself find that I want to I want to do what I can do, then move on. I want to there are plenty of games out there that deserve some attention, and the game seems to just I would love to play more Monster Hunter World, but if it's not going to give me anything new than it already has, then there's no point. And this feels very it kind of loses its charm at that point. So my final verdict: Monster Hunter World is a great game, beautiful. And rewarding. When the first time you fight a monster, it is truly rewarding. But after that, after you defeat the monster, it just ends up being more of the same. It doesn't reward the players enough for the fights that they do. At least that's how I felt. I don't know how you feel of that. Let me know down in the comments how you feel about the about the game. After you beat the main story, what do you feel like? Did you feel any sense of, oh, I'm just doing more of the same kind of scenario? I'm just being forced to do the same thing to get something that eventually means absolutely nothing as soon as the next creature appears? Let me know what you think. Am I the only one who thinks that way? I hope not. Keep in mind that this is only my opinion. I'm not hating on the game. I love the game. I played hours on this game, and I just wanted to share my opinion on the game, my thoughts and opinions. So I'd like to thank you for watching. I hope you found this useful, or whatever, I don't know, anything. Keep in mind that this is my personal opinion. I'd like to thank you for watching. Stay cool, and I'll see you later. Bye.